So the first thing I'm going to do to set up my type spec component, had a brain fart for a second, is I want to create a text frame. And in that text frame, I'm going to create a few text frames, and they're going to become part of a auto layout group, and then we're going to attach some variables to them. Yeah, cool. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create font family, right? Or maybe font name. Actually, no, I don't want to create confusion. Font family, we know where it comes from. Okay, I'm going to make sure that is an auto width. We zoom in so you can see that better. And I'm going to attach my first variable, which is the, you guessed it, maybe you haven't, going to create the mono. And as you see, you may have just seen that. Let me just undo that. Because we've created a, let me quickly get this out real quick. I just want to ensure that you guys really understand this because it's so important from when you're linking your systems together. Because the primary font family is Regality, the secondary is Plus Strigata, and the mono is IBM Plex. The beauty of the fact that we've named these the actual names is when we call upon them for whatever requires a type or a type variable, it will literally convert to whatever you need that thing to be. So in this particular case, let me close that. When I'm going to link a variable, I'm going to literally click on the apply variable. I'm going to call upon my mono. And remember, I named the font IBM Plex Mono. So when I click on this and attach this variable, it's going to change to that font. And that's the beauty of it. So now, if we then go back to our our primary values, sorry, our text primitives, and let's just say you've already done this. And let's just say, for example, actually, no, the best way to explain it to you, let's actually use, let's detach this. Let's actually use Regality in this case, right? I'm going to make it big so you can see it. All right. So Regality, that's the font we're going to use. Now, if you've already created the system and you're moving on to another project and you want to now start to reskin the system, you've already cut a lot of work out, because what you can now do is go into your primitive settings, where I've used the primary font family as Regality. If I wanted to change that to, for example, Arial, because I changed that to Arial, that therefore changes across everywhere you use this variable. And that's literally instant, right? And this is the beauty of our system, the fact that we can literally change it from our settings and not actually have to touch the actual design itself, and it reflects everywhere else, means it's total time saved across the board. I'm going to change that back to Regality. But you can see our system also works. It means that we've actually used the correct name and we've linked the variable correctly as well. Okay? So I just wanted to bring you some assurance that our system is actually working. Well, we knew it was working because it worked on a color, but now we know it's working on type. Okay, where was I? Font family. And then I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to create this as value. I'm going to just use literally a hashtag. I'm going to name that layer value. I'm going to name that font family. Great. I'm going to click on these so I can highlight these. I'm going to do Shift and A to create our auto layout frame, as you can see here. I'm going to make that a horizontal layout. I'm going to make the spacing, again, we're going to use our variables here. I'm going to go to spacing, and I might make that 24. Might be a bit too wide. So let me again amend that to, you can amend it simply by just clicking on it and it brings up the settings again. I might change that to 16. I'm happy with that. Cool. Right. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some colors because I'm extra like that and I want to ensure that our color system always works across the board. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to apply one of our color variables. And the way I do that is I simply click on the apply styles of variables. And then we're going to apply the token that we created for text title, because this is the title of a particular area. So now we know that's got the text title. And then for the value, I'm going to apply body text. So now we know that works. So if I wanted to change this in my documentation, because we will do this at some point, we're going to create a light mode and dark mode for this. I am rest assured that my colors still work because it flips to the colors that I told it to in the variable system. Now let's just change it back just for clarity's sake right now. I'm not too happy with that gap. I'm actually going to change that gap to a 12. Yeah, I think that works better. Okay. Actually, no. This is the creative process. I'm going to change it to an 8. I'm very much happy with that. Cool. So we're going to create that, and I'm going to name this layer font family. Cool. So we know that it's got this value and that value. That's fine. I'm going to create another auto layout frame. So I'm going to create Shift and A. So that's the overall frame. I'm going to call this already .spec notes. Spec notes. No, I'm going to call this type specs. Cool. I'm going to create that as a component early. So now I'm going to start building that component across. So I'm going to also make sure that in that auto layout frame, I have made that a horizontal layout. And the gap, we're going to probably make that a bit wider. So I'm going to apply a variable, and I'm probably going to use, let's say 64. Oh, I've just remembered, you can also type in a figure and get that as well. So that will be 64. That's across the entire component. So now when I duplicate this particular layer, which I will, we can see that has a 64 gap in space. Now for this part, I'm going to name this as font size. And I'm also going to rename that layer as well. Font size. And then with that, so where I'm getting these from is where you have a, for example, the typography panel. I'm literally taking all the values that we're going to use to create our type. So we're going to use the font name, we're going to use the font weight, the font size, we're going to use the line height, we're going to use the letter spacing, which we're not going to use actual pixels and not percentages here. And then we're going to use also paragraph spacing. That's mainly for like the body copy as well. And then for the rest of it, we'll determine what case we're going to use, because we're going to use certain cases when we actually set up the type styles. Okay. So now let me finish creating this component real quick. So font size, that's done. And therefore we're going to use font weight. So whoever's looking at this will know literally off the bat what this is. And I'm going to show you how to link this to our variables as well. So therefore we know. So when it changes in our system, it also changes on the actual document as well. So you don't have to manually change everything as you're using it for another project. Very useful, trust me. Okay, font weight. Lovely. We can see that the layer is renaming itself because I haven't really given that layer an actual name, but I like where it's going already. I like that. Font weight. Then we're going to use line height. Line. And then, oh, I actually didn't name the overall layers. My good. So that's font size. That's font weight. And going to change down to line dash height. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is letter spacing. So letter dash spacing. Again, let me move this out of the way. You guys can still see the shortcuts I'm using. Letter spacing. Boom. And then we are going to create paragraph spacing. Paragraph dash spacing. Paragraph spacing. Boom. One more thing I'll actually want to use as well is I actually want to call it the actual style name. Yeah. Style dash name. And then we'll link that again to the variable. So style name. Again, style name is like, H1, body top, body one, whatever we name it in our variables, we're going to put it here as well. We're going to link it to ensure that it all links properly. Cool. Style dash name. All right, cool. Now we've got that sorted. I've now created that as a component. I'm happy with that. One thing I also want to do, I want to ensure that I'm using this with the touch points in mind as well. So one thing I like to do is obviously ensure that I'm using, do you know what? We actually need to set up a monotype style as well. So let's do that real quick. So right now, I kind of like the fact that it's 16 pixels. The line height 28. I'm not really sure how that works. So how I like to test my font sometimes is I like to create literal scenarios of what this will look like with a piece of body copy. And this is how I use to this is what I use to also determine, um, paragraph spacing and sizing and all those things like that as well. I tend to kind of just drop some dummy text into it, and I tend to determine how I like it, because we're not just going to use this in terms of using, for example, the typeface. We're going to use this to actually create actual document components as well, which I'll also create as we go along. So I'm going to drop that in. So Command Shift and paste, so we can maintain the style. Let's make that grow automatically. And then I'm going to punch in a paragraph. Okay. So now with this, I like the fact that we have a 16 as typeface. The line height at 100%, I'm happy with that. I think that's decent. If I go to auto, what does that give me? Something tighter. So I think I'll keep it at 28 for additional clarity. For letter spacing, I'm happy with that. And then for paragraph spacing, we can see I just punched in the paragraph and it didn't really give me much. So I'm going to make that, let's just say 16. 16? Yeah, 16. Sometimes I like to match it with the line height, but I think 28 will be too much. Yeah, for what it is. So I'm going to put it back at 16. I'm going to match it with the actual fonts. Actually, no, make it 24. I think that's the best balance. So that's our paragraph. So if we're going to see a chunk of this is how it's going to look. Now, how I then translate this, and I'm going to use the same approach to setting up the rest of our type scale, is I'll therefore take all these figures that we got here and plug it in as a token, and then I'll create it as a style. Now, in terms of using the styler plugin, let's see if we can get the styler plugin up. Right click, go to plugins, save plugins, open up styler, and we're going to click on generate styles. Now, before you click on generate styles, how styler works is there's no actual interface for you to interact with styler for what we're about to do. It just does it. It's more like an action, like a Photoshop action where you click on a button and boom, magic happens, right? So the best way to get styler to cooperate with you is to actually name your layer accordingly. So for example, for this particular layer, I'm going to name this spec, capital S, spec / because now we created the group. I'm going to call this regular. Regular. We know that's sorted. And then within that, we're going to right click, we're going to go to plugins, we're going to click on styler, and we're going to click on generate styles. And what that's going to do is going to create the style literally in the group that we just created. So generate styles, and we can see at the bottom it says one style created, right? Nothing renamed, because you can use it to rename layers, but Figma has a new AI thing which I think works a little bit better as well. So now when we click on our canvas, we can see that our style is created. So that's one way of doing it, right? Let me undo that. Yes, I am very still much of the idea that you should name your layers anyway. But another way we can do set the style is we can simply, let me break that. Click on the add style button, apply styles, press on the create style button, and again we can type in the name, and we can use the same naming convention that we used for our layer. So spec / regular, and then click on create style, and it'll create the style literally in that same respect. Okay, I've used styler. I'm going to literally reapply the style, and then I'm going to add the values that we created in the style into our variable system. So I just realized I say so a lot, but hey, when you talk this much, it's better than or ours, I think anyway. Okay, open up local variables. We're going to have that. Let me just unlock that so I can see everything. Local variables. We're going to go to our type collection. And then the first set we're going to create is you guessed it, string. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is create this as mono, or let's even give it the actual name that we called it, spec / regular. Now we're now linking everything properly. Sorry, that was wrong. Let me call it regular. Spell it. Regular. So now we'd have created a group called regular. Now in that group, we're going to call upon our font variables. So we're going to start with the first one, which would be font family. And then we're going to link that by an alias. Now, before we do that, I need to explain one more thing to you as well. This is now where we start to use the modes. Now, the modes will literally tell us how the font or whatever component we create will behave when it comes to certain screen sizes, which we'll also set in another set of tokens very soon. So now, the current value we have for this is desktop. The next thing we're going to set is tablet and then mobile. But I like to kind of set all the strings first, because when you tap on mode, it'll literally duplicate the values you have. And for time saving sake, it'll just save us a lot of time from writing things over and over again. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. We're going to set up the desktop variables right now. So desktop variables. So I'm going to set up the font name, which will be, oh, why did I close it? Sometimes this happens. That's my fault. I pressed the wrong button. We're going to click on the apply variable button. Then we're going to link that to font family mono. Then I'm going to shift and duplicate that. Font weight. Then we're going to break that, and we're going to link that to the font weight of, let me delete that quick. Oh no, font weight was a number, isn't it? See, there you go. You kind of link a number when it comes to text. See that? So let me just delete that and delete the variable. I'm going to create a number. I'm going to call it font weight. Then I'm going to drag this into the group because I don't want it to be lingering. And then I'm going to link that font weight to what we have here, that 400, because that's what we're using. We're using the regular, which is the 400. Okay. They're going to duplicate that again. I'm going to link that to another font size. Oh, wrong area I'm editing. Font size. And again, that font size is 16. So we're going to link that to a spacing of 16. Okay. Now, what's next? Line height. So I'm going to duplicate that. Line-height. They're going to link that to 28. Now, again, I just need to reiterate for you guys, this is how I do things. I am always very much open to learn other ways of doing things. So if you guys are in the comments and you're thinking, there's another way you can do that, please share it with me, because I like efficiency. But I'm just showing you how I do it, and this might help someone else. But again, if you have another way, by all means, feel free to share, and maybe in my next video, I might actually use your strategy because it actually might be more efficient than mine. I'm not proud. I like to get better and better. And you should adopt that same strategy as well. Okay. So from line height, we can go to letter spacing. I'm going to keep that at 0. So letter dash spacing, I'm going to keep that at 0. Cool. Because we know we can change at any point in time. And then paragraph spacing, what do we have for that? 24. So I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call it paragraph spacing. And we're going to link that at 24. Perfect. 24. Cool. So we need to plug them in again real quick. That's a really simple, easy job because we've been doing this since we actually created it. So I'm going to plug that in. Spec. Yep. Variable 700. Sorry, spec font weight 700. spec font size 16. Again, spec line height 28. Spec data spacing 0. Type on extended panel, paragraph spacing, spec. I'm going to rate that paragraph spacing, boom. So now we know that those figures are now fully plugged in and actually applied to the actual style. Let me just test that real quick. I'm going to open that up. And yet my figures are still very much here. So now I could now start creating the rest of the type scale, but I think at this point you've understood the process, right? Now, on your own, in your own time, use what I've just shown you here. Nothing is going to change to set up your, you need to start doing things yourself now so you can practice. You're going to set up your H2, all of these, set this all up by yourself, right? I'm going to set this up as well. And then in the next video, I'm going to actually now add the slight modifications of this type scale as well for inputs or for, helper text, whatever we're going to use. You can have a stab at doing that yourself as well, but I'm definitely going to show you how I do mine on my end. Okay. So, yeah. So, I already know, put a block of text there for your title, put a block of text there, set up everything before you actually create a style, right? If you're happy with the way it looks, the proximity is nice, the font size is nice. I always recommend as well, make sure your page is at 100% when you're looking at desktop, so you know exactly how that's going to look. Set all that up, plug in the values, plug it into your variable system, come back, attach those variables to your actual type properties, and then create the style, either the manual way or through the styler plugin. And then you'll create your type scale like that. And in the next video, again, we'll start to look at how we can now optimize what we've done on desktop for tablet and for mobile. All right, guys, happy working. See you in the next video. Guys, please forgive me. I forgot to actually show you one more thing that was actually quite important. Okay, I'm going to spend about 2-3 minutes explaining this. So remember this component that we created, the type spec component. You may be thinking, how? I remembered, don't worry. So I'm going to duplicate that. And then I'm going to take the master by cutting it and sticking it on our page components page. I do appreciate that I kind of need to tidy this up at some point, but right now these components are not even that important, so I couldn't really care too much on how that looks because it only relates to our documentation. So, and then now I need to link all the variables that were found in this style to this spec sheet, right? To this spec note. So the first thing we're going to do, the style name, is I'm actually going to link it to, I'm actually going to manually type that. And what we need to do for that is we need to create some component properties for this particular one. Now, one thing we can do is we can go back into our local variables and I can create another variable for style name. It's already got a style name and people can see it, right? But maybe for ease, we might just do something for ourselves and add a style name so we can link it properly. But the reason why I don't really recommend that is because more times than not, it's not going to change. Do you know what I mean? The style name is the style name. So whether you plug that into your variable or not, it's not going to add or take away from your design at all. So I'll just literally manually type that in. But one thing I need to do here is I need to actually create a component property. I'm going to go back to the actual component itself. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select on this particular layer here, the value. I'm then going to create a property. So create, I'm going to link that as the property. I'm going to call this style dash name. And that will be there. Cool. So then I'm going to go back to the instance. And then with that, I'm going to call the style name. I'm going to call this, what did we call it? Spec / regular. So we know that's what I called it. Style name. Don't know why you don't have a colon. Let's quickly go back and adjust that in the file. Real quick. I'm very much about my details. Okay, that's done. Return to the instance. Okay, that shows up nicely. So that will be what we call it. And again, like I said, that's always going to be called spec regular. Okay. Now the font family, we're going to link that as a variable. So we're going to click on the apply variable button, type in spec, and link that to font family, and that's going to show up there. Font size as well. Call that font size, spec, and link that to font size. And then font weight, again, click on apply variable, spec, link that to font weight. So you can see it's bringing up all the values. It's going to be really useful for us. I just realized none of them have colons, but I'll sort that out off screen. You guys can tweet that if you want. And then line height, spec, and link that to line height, 28. And then letter spacing, apply variable, letter spacing in reg, thank you. And then paragraph spacing, apply the variable, spec, paragraph spacing, boom, and that's fine. That is sorted. Now, I did mention as well that I like to look at this component from a responsive perspective as well earlier on. So one thing I like to do is, I know that this is going to be literally absolute height and width that we're going to use, right? So I'm going to expand it to make it fill. So I'm literally going to get the maximum width of this component I can possibly get. And then with that, I'm going to make sure this now wraps. Okay. Now, why am I going to use this? Why am I going to pick wrap on this particular component? This is 704. Cool. I'm going to go to the actual component. Why am I using wrap? Because when we now put it on this particular spec on the tablet frame, I want to ensure that this spec can resize itself. Okay. Now, another way we can look at this as well, and you can have a play with this as well, and I actually might have a play with it because I'm thinking about it now, is I might actually plug in some actual values so we can ensure that the sizing kind of works when it does wrap itself. But generally speaking, might not be something you want to play with too much. I don't know, it's up to you. Again, it's not that important of a component. It's only important in regards to the information it displays. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug in, and what was the width of that again? The width of that was 704. Okay. Let me undo that. So sure. Okay. Go back to the actual component. I'm going to give it a fixed width of 1704. And then I'm going to choose a thing to wrap. So now I know when it wraps, it's literally going to drop. And what's the width we're going to use? We're probably going to use the same 64. And how do I test that? All I do is duplicate, and then I start to resize it literally manually. So you can see it's resizing. Now, when we're thinking of how this is going to look on mobile, which is going to be like that, I'm starting to think that maybe 64 might be a bit too wide to have as a gap. So I might lower it down to maybe 24. That's just me eyeballing it. Again, eyeball whatever you guys need to do. Turn this off. Eyeball this to whatever you guys want to do. I don't know why the reaction thing's not going away, but it's not distracted from anything. So I'm going to change that to 24. Let me look at how that looks. Yeah, perfect. So when you're looking at on the mobile frame, we're going to know that when that starts to resize, it's going to go 24. So let's say the mobile frame will be 345. We know that's how it's going to look. We know obviously there's certain elements that will kind of be, because of the gap that we set. But do you know what? I'm not too bothered about that. Again, it's not very much important. I might just set it up to ensure that everything is vertical. And then when we go on tablet as well, I might just set it up where I get just, maybe 2 rows. So we get something like that going. Okay. We'll kind of tweak it as we go to ensure that it's clear. Or again, maybe for tablet and mobile, I might just go for a straight vertical layout. So I know that my wrap mechanism works. So that's what I wanted to show you, how to kind of link also the variables to this particular component as well. So therefore, again, like we've done before, when we want to change something at a component level, at a very, very granular level, it will literally reflect everywhere else. Okay. So now I've done that, my conscience is now clear that I haven't misled you guys or didn't promise to show you what I was going to show you. You guys can carry on with laying out your type scale. And yeah, feel free to kind of send me your type scales as well. If you want some feedback, show it to me. And I might include some of it in a video. You never know. If you want personal one-on-one, I got a Patreon. Click on that and then we can take it from there. All right, guys, I'm out. Next video.